Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss Japan's latest statement of intent regarding a potential post-Brexit deal with the UK. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, given that prominent Brexiteers, including Boris Johnson, have been telling us for years that the world will be falling over itself to give us great trade deals just as soon as we've left the EU, the race was always going to be on to make good on those boasts as soon as Brexit was delivered. Now that the date of leaving is not only certain but almost upon us, Johnson has been talking on an almost daily basis about the great trade deals we're going to be getting with the major economies around the world. So the year started off, much as it ended in 2019, with talk of a comprehensive deal with the EU. Of course, even Boris Johnson can't bluff enough people that trade with our immediate neighbours isn't important. He also talked up, of course, the US trade deal. Now, this is natural because it is the vehicle that he can use to completely strip the country of its environmental and workers' protection laws. He then said he'd be conducting trade negotiations with the US and the EU simultaneously in order to play one off against the other. Not quite sure how a country that hasn't independently conducted any trade negotiations for like 2 generations is going to make such an obvious ploy work with the 2 best negotiating teams in the world. But, you know, let's just say, we'll gloss over that for now. But discussions with any other major economies are somewhat pointless for now. They've made it clear that they will not negotiate any deals with the UK until we have settled our relationship with the EU. Now, during years of Brexit preparations, if we can be charitable enough to call them that, Liam Fox, who's a former minister under Theresa May, was jetting all over the world in order to get deals with all the countries that the EU currently has with. And although he couldn't negotiate new deals until he left the EU, rules don't allow it, there was nothing to stop him getting continuity arrangements. So that meant basically copying and pasting the agreements that we already had as EU members and just be able to use them as independent UK after Brexit. And Fox boasted that it would be easy to get all of these and that they'd all be in place well before the deadline, the original deadline, of March 2019. Well, it's nearer March 2020 and we still don't have that many. No major economy has signed up to these continuity deals and only a small number of medium-sized nations have. Most countries told us to get our deal with the EU first, then we'll talk. So imagine my surprise when a few days ago Boris Johnson was saying that actually the first trade deal we were going to be getting was with Japan. I mean to say Japan. Wasn't that one of the countries that told us to piss off until we'd sorted ourselves out with the EU? Apparently not. According to Johnson, he was saying that he'll be getting a trade deal with Japan almost immediately upon leaving the EU, certainly by the end of 2020, which in practical terms can be fairly immediate because trade deals, as most of us know, actually take years and years and years. So I will accept any trade deal that can be in place by the end of the year is fairly quick. So Cabinet discussed the matter this week and agreed to pursue a deal with Japan with all haste as an easy, quick win for the post-Brexit period. This was going to be the priority. Not a deal with the EU or the US, they're fairly high priority, but no, apparently Japan was the best chance for a quick win. And consider what that means in itself. So Cabinet thinks that it can get a deal with Japan by the end of 2020. Okay. And that is the basis upon which they are pursuing this. Not because Japan is the priority trading partner. Don't get me wrong, it is one of the major economies of the world, one of the very biggest, but it's not even in the top 10 in terms of the value of trade that we have as the UK. Our trade with Germany alone is worth 6 times as much, and that's just one part of the EU as a whole. Trade with Japan is completely dwarfed by the value of trade with the EU. So if they're prioritising Japan-based trade based on how quickly they think they can get a deal, not how important it is important, but based purely on how quickly they can get it, and they think that they can get it by the end of the year, then that same cabinet, by logical extension, is essentially saying that a deal with the EU is therefore impossible by the end of the year, because that would be preferable if you had to choose between the two, which ones to do more quickly. I mean, of course it's impossible, you know, but if they know that, then why the hell are they forcing themselves into legal knots to make extending the transition period much more difficult at the end of the year? Now, coming back to Japan, it has certainly softened its stance a little. It was very much opposed to Brexit on the basis of the harm it would cause, particularly its car industry. There are a lot of factories in the UK, Japanese car factories, and they would find it much more difficult to trade with the EU, being based in the UK. But they've largely mitigated that problem by closing down the factories. Many of them are going to be gone in a couple of years. They also now have the free trade agreement with the EU all signed, sealed and delivered. So that has also eased the problem. It means actually some of those factories have not even had to relocate to the EU. They've relocated to Japan because they can now trade fairly freely with the EU. So Japan is now willing to engage in talks with the UK about a post-Brexit deal. They are no longer telling us to piss off. However, the noises coming out of those who will need to conduct these talks are still that of Japan wants to know what the final arrangement is going to be between London and Brussels before Tokyo will commit to anything. So although Japan is keen to engage and is absolutely up for negotiating this year, it appears that they will not conclude anything before the EU deal is in place. So the UK may be saying that it wants a trade deal in place by the end of the year, but Japan, although it's saying, yeah, we're quite happy to engage in talks, doesn't really seem to be saying, yeah, we think we can do it in a year. That basically means if the EU deal is not negotiated by the end of this year, then a Japanese one will certainly not, because Japan has a comprehensive deal with the EU, and it won't be able to sign up to anything with the UK that will jeopardise that. The UK is a significant chunk of the Japanese economy, just as Japan is for the UK economy. But for both of us, not nearly as much as the EU. That is the most important trading partner. And that is going to be the clinching argument with whomever we'd wish to do business with. And finally, just out of interest, along with the EU, the US and Japan, the British government has also identified Australia and New Zealand as top priorities for getting a deal with, again on the basis of how quickly they think they can do it. So those are the first 5 that we expect to be pursuing and expect to have delivered. And as the government believes that those are the ones we can get the deals with most quickly, it may be sobering to see just how long those quick deals take, and then consider how long it will take to negotiate deals with all the others. And when I say all the others, I mean the rest of the world. And that's before we even consider whether the deals we end up with are actually any good for Britain. They won't be better than we had, but will they be even all right? That will have to come later. So I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.